introduction, Darrell currently works with Oz Cannabis in Ypsilanti, but before he was with Oz, he was one of the founders of the very first locally recognized dispensary in the state, Third Coast Compassion, along with Jamie Lowell and another gentleman, so Anthony Freed. Long history, back all the way to 2009,
Yes.
staying in the industry. And Darrell, you were uninterrupted, completely in this industry the entire time, and still are. What a change you may have witnessed. I mean, my gosh.
Well, I think a lot of that had to do with, day one, we went straight to the city, and kind of, me and Jamie, and I think Anthony was in that meeting, but definitely Jamie and I were, and we met with the zoning commissioner of the city, and we just started doing things kind of right out in the open with them and asked them first. And they said, yeah, it looks like I don't see why you couldn't do this, is what they told us. So
Right.
that's it. If you go that way, you can always, no one's going to try to shut you down. The city was with us. The police asked.
The county prosecutor did not make it priority, which is
Correct.
makes a big difference. Yeah.
They're not going to fight with the city.
Yeah, so, exactly. So, and we give so many tours throughout the whole state where they would come down to Third Coast, police department, locals, and small municipalities would come through. And we were always very professional. It's funny because when we started Third Coast, we were all suit and tie. So, even Jamie, I think, had a suit and tie at one point. But, yeah.
That's awesome. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Funny, Harry from People's Choice now, but he was one of our first bud tenders. He wore a suit those first few days, too.
I am surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
It's not court, and he was in a suit. Wow.
And Harry was with People Choice up to the point when it was still good and respectable.
Right.
And then he left, and then that ceased, just for clarity.
Yeah, there you go, Jamie.
And of course, you guys set the standard too with cannabis-themed events. The Eagle Crest Resort right there in Ypsilanti. That was 2010. You started right off by sort of redefining where the boundaries were in the state of Michigan and in Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti specifically.
Yeah, that was one of the first actual cannabis cups, kind of. We called it a Caregiver Cup because that's what we were. We were all caregivers. We did it as a private club. And at that time, they allowed us to do a vapor tent. It was a 5,000 square foot tent. I had to bring vaporizers to the police chief and fire marshal, and I had to show them how these devices worked. These were all meetings leading up to these because they wanted to see were there any issues. They definitely didn't want us to do open smoke in that, so that's why
we had noticed there were some like weddings and stuff, and they did kind of just let them get away with smoking. But because of all the attention on this, the fire marshal and everybody said you can't do that.
Yeah,
but they said vaping was okay, and like somebody had to go down to Ohio and buy like 40 or 50 vapes or something like that.
That's a great part of the story, that you could only vape, you couldn't smoke, but you didn't want people to have to bring their own vaporizers because it was such a new technology. So you scoured the state. You even had to go to Ohio so you could provide for your
we had
patients,
40,
right?
40 vaporizers, and these were the old ones with the whip.
Yeah,
they have alcohol swabs everywhere. And the funniest part about the whole situation was, Jamie and I were so busy getting the event put on and doing everything in the ballroom and all that stuff that the fire marshal actually showed up and was hanging out in the vape tent. And people were asking, how do you use this thing? He was there showing people because he saw the demonstrations I gave him. He's in uniform showing them how these devices work.
I wish there's a photo of that. That would be classic. No, so let's fast forward now. I mean, we talked about some of the history, but fast forward to right now, Darrell. Some of the things that we did then, in the interim, I mean, we did the extravaganza with Big Daddies. We rented out the Imlay City Fairgrounds in Lapeer County, so we were pushing the boundaries in 2010 and 2011 also, too. And then for a period of time, all that stuff was brought to a screeching halt. They didn't want to do any of it. Then the High Times Cannabis Cups came back, and they started to redo events. Now we're seeing some things that we used to be able to get away with, licensed and regulated in ways we never imagined possible. What do you think about some of those things?
I still know there's no full enforcement on a lot of issues, so a lot of these things will continue on for a while, almost how they were. But eventually, I'm sure they're trying to get a stranglehold on it. I've seen some good licensed events in California. There's ways to do it properly. It's just very difficult. They've made it difficult to do events, for sure.
One of the difficult things is insurance. I know that you've been doing some different things. You've talked to some different people. Darrell, insurance for cannabis events, what's your insight into that?
And we even had that at our 2010 event. So that one at Hillcrest, we had insurance. It was an insurance rider that we had to pay for a 2-day event. It wasn't like too outrageous, but it was new to them. So it was one of those, we had to have an ambulance that was on staff.
Right. Some of that stuff was expensive, man. Some of that extra add-on shit last
When
minute.
you say expensive, I mean, it was $5,000 for the 2 days. I mean, that's even though it's only a 2-day insurance, it's when you look at that many people coming, $5,000 is not like astronomical.
Not that, but there was like a list of things that were like add-on.
Very expensive though.
You had to have medical personnel on staff. You had to have a certain number of security personnel on staff. You had to have plans. I know. I remember when we
had music downtown for people, and there was a bus or revolving transportation for anybody. We took people who were patients right to the dispensary on a regular basis, and then later at night downtown to where we had bands in venues set up and stuff. That was
the good old days.
Yeah.
Insurance companies are getting kind of smart thing. They're jumping on the bandwagon just like anyone else.
So Darrell, you talked about there's ways that they can do things and still make it work. Now we've got cannabis companies similar to Oz that are deciding they want to come against caregivers, that they want to crack down on somebody that's not really proven to be a problem. That does give your industry a bad name. Russ was saying he's oftentimes had to explain to people he's not part of that group. Is that a conversation you have to have with people?
Yeah, for sure. And Oz is in the same situation. I mean, they're local guys too. They were all caregivers, used to build Caregiver Growth for people too. And what I tell people and what these big guys need to really look at, caregivers are not competition. There's plenty of people. I mean, it's stupid that they even think that. It's not even a huge number if you really look at it as a whole. What they need to look at is maybe petitioning the legislation to ease the testing requirement and put things more on a level playing ground. Those are things they should be looking at, because some of these testing requirements, they don't have that in organic growing of tomatoes and herbs and turmeric and things like that. I know people in California that have, they went through all the testing stuff there for a lot of their capsules that they've made and kept failing, finally broke the whole capsule down. All their cannabis stuff that was in it was passing with flying colors. It was organic turmeric that they bought from Whole Foods that was failing. So, I mean, if there's not stringent requirements on everyone else and things that we're putting in our edibles, then why is there that stringent of requirements on everything else that we do? So, I mean, that would be more of an even playing ground that they should argue with, if anything. I would never argue. That means they're not doing their job.
Right, move forward, not backwards.
Why don't we concentrate on fair banking?
Right.
I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, there's definitely other things they need to complain about. Because if you're complaining about caregivers taking your business, that means you're not doing your job well.
Nope.
Yeah.
Explain about that, Darrell. Talk a little bit more about that. There's plenty of action out there for people if they structure their corporate entity correctly. They can deal with this without hurting caregivers. Isn't that true?
100%. I mean, the fact is, like, I'll go back to testing. There are a lot of commercial grows that are failing a lot of tests, and they're working through it and trying to work out much. One of the things I do, a company called Team Ag Solutions, so we're a consulting group. So we've been going around to a lot of these licensed facilities and changing some of the practices that they're doing so they can pass some of these stringent tests. So, I mean, once that happens, I mean, there's plenty of flower out there. Oz has no problem finding flower from the licensed systems. So, I mean, they have one of the biggest inventories probably in the state. So that's why we do so well at the one Ypsilanti shop, at least. Because, people complain that they can't find adequate medicine. It's out there. They just don't know where to look. Everybody's being lazy, and they're looking at the Leaf Link or something. And hey, I can't find it in Leaf Link. Well, old school days with caregivers, we didn't have Leaf Link. We had to go find people. And that's what you need to do. There's a list of all the farms in the commercial thing. You could literally have a sales guy, go out there, introduce yourself, say, hey, we're buying flour, we're buying extracts. I come across farms that have a bunch of material and they don't know where to get rid of it. So, I mean, they're out there. People are just being lazy, and they need to actually do their job.
Ida.
Yes.
You wanted to say something you mentioned?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's closing time. The office is closing. I was just waving bye to everybody.
Aww. Well, but let's talk about that, though. MICIA, you're full of a whole bunch of people that do cultivation and retail. If there was ever an organization that was going to hear about problems in the industry, it's one that has 350 members. Are you really hearing from your members that it's so difficult to survive out there that they have to predate on the sick and innocent in order to survive?
No, caregivers are not even on the radar. So we have more important issues to work on.
This was never discussed.
Ida, could you imagine if I called you and I said, you got to do something about these caregivers? I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Let me use this as an opportunity to add on to that. We were going to talk, we don't have to get too in-depthly into it, into some of the implications if some of this language were to actually be changed and the caregivers were to have to be in metric and to have their medicine consistently tested. What type of log jam, what type of strain on existing resources would having to go to thousands of different houses potentially throughout the state have?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The reality is that with only 15 testing centers and 30,000 caregivers, if you were to require caregivers to test their cannabis, remember each caregiver garden usually has between 2 and 12 different strains based on how wild that caregiver feels like being that particular harvest, right? But each one of those strains requires different testing, and that would absolutely swamp an industry where it's already pretty strained as it is. Testing facilities don't have a lot of extra capacity to just absorb 2,000 caregivers as customers. In addition to that, the distribution of testing facilities is really limited in Michigan. The most northern one is in Traverse City. There's not even one in the entire Upper Peninsula. So that makes that testing of caregiver cannabis non-functional. And let's also talk about making caregivers monitor their gardens through the metric system, similar to the way that the commercial market does right now. I know retailers and commercial guys that try to call the marijuana regulatory agency for guidance and for assistance and have a hard time getting through. Imagine how tough it would be getting through and getting things resolved if the MRA had 30,000 caregivers that they had to add into the metric system, that they had to advise on how to properly tag their plants, and that when the metric system goes down, imagine how much more difficult it would be to restore service to those retailers, because there'd just be so many more users. There can't be more than 1,500 users in metric, 2,000 users total. And you want to put 15 times that on the system all at once, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right? Now, that's just not going to work. So when we mentioned at the beginning of the show how some of these concepts didn't seem like they'd been thought all the way through, there's a real detriment to the existing regulated system by adopting some of these. And the people in the NCMA will be the ones most negatively affected by this. That's why it's almost laughable that they've put forth this proposal or this series of proposals. And the fact that they actually would get legislators to support them is even more.
I mean, if they got that push through, then be fair, let the caregivers sell to the commercial dispensaries.
They'll never.
If they have to do, I know that, but I mean.
Yeah, for me, that's not even an option. I mean, patients use everything I grow. It's not even an option. I'm looking to sell into the dispensaries.
No, but some would like to, and in fact, during the emergency rules, that was going on regularly.
Maybe, I don't know.
I
and
don't
it worked
understand.
out. And it goes on in Oklahoma. Go ahead, Adam.
You couldn't enter the licensed market. It should be about a tested product if that's what they're going to require. If they require testing, and I can pass testing, I should be able to be in that market. It should.
Well, that's what it is in Oklahoma. It's a small price for a license to participate, but people grow it on their own property and then bring it to market.
Yeah.
Well, I think these people would back off if that was on the table too. That would scare them even more.
Well, that's the point. If we're going to open up the act, that's the kind of stuff we have to look at. Again,
that's just open up the act. I mean,
And there's a lot of things to fix. There have been a lot of dysfunctional and completely obstructionist interpretations that have yet to be addressed. That have been effectuated by Bill Schuette and others. And if we're going to open up the act again, that's where I'd rather spend some time.
Yeah, there's no reason not to co-locate caregiver grows. You shouldn't have to have grows segregated if they're different patients and the same caregiver operates that. You should be able to have people come in your grow to be able to assist you. It shouldn't be exclusively just one particular person. And the
idea of you can only
2.5 ounces as an amount you can carry as a caregiver. There's so many different things we could do.
And the delivery.
So it's been misinterpreted that your 15 ounces is the max you can have even at your house. And of course, you're growing 72 plants.
Right.
You're going to have more than 15 ounces likely.
You're out of.
And so that was designed for when you're out and about. Not
and also
for what's at your house.
The cost of all the stuff. The cost of testing and the cost of moving this product around and blah blah blah. It's going to increase the meds. You know, but this is part of the reason that we're so successful with
It's
the
an unnecessary
caregiver
burden.
system. Everything is the whole thing is
Every time the average price of cannabis goes up, the number of people participating goes down.
Guess how many people they pointed to as victims of not having these safeguards in place?
No victims.
Zero.
Zero.
There's no issue.
Right.
It's never
So it's
been.
obvious. And again, it's obvious what's
No
what
I
the
argue-
is.
Yeah.
For them to look at
Yeah.
looking at the testing, get that more. If the commercial group can get closer to the same level as the caregivers, at least get the testing a little more less strict. I mean, that's the way I look at things. But then they're not gonna argue about things.
Do you guys think it's inevitable that they're going to open it up and change some things in there? Like that is going to happen, and what preparations can we find that, you know, if it comes down to these bargaining chips of like, you know, you want that, well then we want this, and how would that work out? And that's because that's something that I can see definitely happen.
That's a concern, man, especially when you have good things. There are good things out there. The pediatric bill would require, which was to allow pediatric patients to use cannabis on school grounds and grade schools. It requires opening up the MMA in part, along with some educational codes and stuff like that. And
Director Brisbow's hot on. I'm sorry. Director Brisbow's hot on combining the medical and the adult use licensing programs. We barely stopped him from introducing a bill last year to do the same. We needed it to have more modifications. Clearly, it's going through modifications right now.
The Delta 8 bill would open up the MRTMA and possibly the MMMA, according to like the information that's being circulated, to change definitions of hemp and marijuana.
So it's inevitable. It's going to happen.
Well, that's not a foregone conclusion, you know.
I think it is. I think what Director Brisbow wants, Director Brisbow gets. He wants these two things combined. Ida, you see you're more close to this than any of us. Do you think it's kind of inevitable that they're going to try and combine these two programs this year?
He's trying, yeah.
But the devil's in the details. He can try. If it's shitty, you know, I mean, that's going to be an issue. So,
right.
I think what we're agreeing on is that there will be a proposal made. We're not agreeing that it'll be successful, but I think we're agreeing that they will make a proposal to join those two, and that would require opening up both of our voter-directed initiatives.
Just a little active sometimes when we start talking about this stuff. So,
it's good.
Well, it's a matter the reason why I bring it up is a matter of being prepared for, like, you know, the better changes that need to exist, you know, for outdoor growing, for example, and whatnot. So.
Well, this is why having a full dialogue is important, because not only are we talking about things we don't like, we're also talking about things that we do like. And we know that Cabbage Café is a very popular show. Nationally, we've won awards. We're recognized here in the state. So there are lawmakers that pay attention to what we say. And if we bring up ideas that sound like they are plausible, that they are workable, and there may be good workarounds, they may find their way into legislation if there's champions out there that do that. So this is the process by which we self-regulate our industry. Okay, it's bad. People have a bad idea, they throw it out there. All of us rise up with our pitchforks and say, "Bad idea," and then they push a little harder on their bad idea, and we rise up even further. And that's when they finally back down and realize they can't get away with what they tried to do. That's us self-regulating the industry, and that's a positive thing. So yay to all the revolutionaries out there that are pitchforking and burning, torching, heading towards Frankenstein's castle to get this guy's ass kicked.
Hey, I know that at this point, Russ does have to get back to work, and just want to, before you have to do that, just give you a second to maybe offer some last words.
Thanks for fighting a good fight. Thanks for having me. And I've got to take my daughter to soccer practice. So
cool.
I'm going to run, but thanks, everybody. I appreciate everything. Keep it up. Yeah.
See you, man.
Right?
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
So, Darrell, you have a son that's very, very successful in sports, too, I just saw. Congratulations to you and he.
I think anytime I don't have to pay for college, that's a good thing.
And is that he's getting a full scholarship for soccer?
Yeah, well, he's at a school where they can't give it for athletics, so they figure a way to do it for academics. But they're having him play soccer, and he's a track guy, so it's great. I'll have to brag real quick, but he's a big pole vaulter, so he got it for pole vaulting. You know, he's jumping about 14.6, which is pretty high. But he broke his hand in the second to last meet on a pole vault. The place they were at had a faulty hole that he stuck in, and he slipped, shattered his hand and his elbow. So what does this kid do the next meet? He's in a full cast, They left his elbow alone, but just kind of in a sling. But he decides to do a long jump and takes first place ever. And then he second meet after that, he qualified for states. So now he's going to states as a long jump.
Well, I'm a former pole vaulter myself. I pole vaulted in high school, and I'll tell you, 14 feet plus, that's a big pole.
Yeah.
I did too, Rick. I didn't get very high. So
yeah, that's bigger than I can
I
claim.
get higher in other ways now.
I mean the real pole vaulting, right? I mean, like track and field got a letter for it, not the kind of pole vaulting that you might be thinking I was talking about.
Wow.
Yeah, Flint Central, baby. Everything went down there. Come on. So, Darrell, again, Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor has been a real bastion of cannabis freedom, not only in Michigan but in the United States of America. And you've assisted in the production or supported Hash Bash, Mr. Hash Bash's Hash Bash Cup programs that he's done, the various ones over the years. How important is it to you to stay active and to support the things that our people come to?
Well, I love to stay active as much as I can, but there's new groups coming, and I have no problem with the new and younger people coming in. And I'm there for support, and let these new people kind of come in and do the thing, as long as, we don't forget about the guys that have been doing this for a long time, like Adam Brook, like, Rick Thompson, you guys, all of you. They need to not forget about who's brought this to that level. And these are good events that have been going on. And I hope they continue to go on as long as they can. And, I'm always there to support as much as I can. But, I even though I'm not as old as most people probably think I am, I feel like I'm getting older. So, for me, it's time to pass the baton. I told everybody I'm giving a 3-year run right now, even with the license marks and everything. But I'm here to, help support other people as much as I can, their growth now. My growth's happened. We've done what we can. And, I want to see other people succeed now. That's why I created the consulting company that we have now called Team Ag Solutions. So we're here to help.
Say the name of it again.
Yeah, it's Team Ag Solutions.
Okay.
It's a group mainly of 3 of us. My main cultivation guy, Brandon Show. If you see on Instagram, he's Dr. Kenobi. He controlled 300,000 square feet of canopy in outside of Santa Barbara, California for years. Adam, my other partner, he was number 2 employee at Glass House. He basically built that whole facility, which just sold for $500 million in California. So, these guys know what they're doing. And we're helping some of these big farms now kind of adjust to growing at scale and how to build out scale. So that's kind of what we're focusing on now. We're building a new facility on the West Coast right now that I have to be there Thursday for final approval with the township, but we'll have a 10,000 plant grow there that we're controlling for another group, but all the licensing is in my name of that. But these are projects that we're working on, and like I said, I'm going to give it a 3-year run, and then I'll hand it off. So that's kind of my goal right now.
3 years after 13, so I mean it's it's quite a stretch. Man.
Yeah, just so you.